Hey, what's up everyone? I'm Madison and welcome back to day 5 of Testimony Week. Today we have an amazing testimony, Jackie Arthur. Y'all, when I say the video is 15 minutes itself, the testimony, watch the entire thing. This video is crazy impactful. The testimony, the story, y'all, you need to listen to the entire thing. It's very impactful. Hey, so let's check it out, Jackie's testimony.
Hey, my name is Jackie Arthur and I'm doing this video from Asheville, North Carolina. That happens to be the same place where I met Madison and his family many years ago when they lived here. We went to the same church and did ministry together. And just want to say thank you for the opportunity to do this video. And Madison, thank you for your obedience to follow Jesus and just to walk in the calling that God has on your life. And thank you for doing these videos and having this ministry, and yeah, just thanks for who you are and all that you do for the kingdom of God. So I'm going to tell a short story about the darkness of drug addiction. It's not something that when I was a kid I'm like, hey, when I grow up, I pray that I'm going to be a drug addict, that I'm going to be in and out of jail and homeless and know what it's like to prostitute and be wanted by the FBI. I didn't want that for myself. When I was a kid, I knew that I didn't want to be an alcoholic like my mom. I knew that. I didn't want to do drugs like I saw some of my friends doing. As a teenager, I didn't really do drugs. It wasn't until I was about 21 and I was dating a guy and fell madly in love and found out that he had been doing drugs, and I tried everything I could to get him off of the drugs and nothing worked. And finally I came up with what I thought was this brilliant idea of maybe if I tell him that I want to do the drugs, that he loves me so much that he won't want that for me and he will stop doing drugs and love will save the day and we'll live happily ever after. And that's not quite how it worked out. I told him I wanted to do drugs, and hey, next thing I know, I am doing drugs. I'm doing heroin. I'm shooting up heroin. And I was catapulted into a life of crime, a life of darkness, a life of doing things that I didn't know I was capable of doing. I tell you that my addiction took me to some places like homelessness and in and out of jail, and stealing from everybody that I know and that I loved, and robberies, and just this life of crime, neglect that happened to animals that we had, not getting them the care that they needed and the food that they needed sometimes, because when you're a heroin addict, your number one priority is to not be in heroin withdrawal. And of course, every night you go to bed, you wake up and you're in heroin withdrawal until you get your next shot of heroin. And you will do whatever it takes, and I mean whatever it takes, to avoid heroin withdrawal. And it didn't take me long before I was doing some things that I didn't know I was capable of knowing. And I want to mention this because it's super important. The first time I did heroin, I really believed that I was way too strong-willed and I had too much power and control to ever let a drug get control of me. And I want to tell you that John 10:10 says, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what drugs do. I really thought that I could just do drugs every now and then when I wanted, or I could just do them long enough to get my boyfriend off of the drugs. I didn't know that the drugs would have such a strong hold on me, but they did, and they do. When you do drugs, they get a hold of you and turn you into a person that your family doesn't recognize. So I'll tell you just a couple of little stories, because A, we don't have a whole lot of time for a lot of stories, but B, some of the stories, there's not really a church-friendly way to tell some of the stories. So I'll tell you one of the more painful ones for me. I'll tell you, as a 12-year-old little girl, I was taken away from my mom, and I went to go live with my brother and his wife. He got custody of me, and my mom just had to get sober and she could get me back. My mom never got sober and got me back. So the worst day of my life was I had a 7-year-old son, and the state came in and took him away, and they placed him in a foster home because of my drug addiction. By far the worst thing that had ever happened to me, and it was the most painful thing that also had ever happened to me. And you know, long story short, I ended up kidnapping him from the foster home. I went there one day with a gun, and I was prepared to use the gun. Like, I went there with my mind made up. I'm going to get my kid. You can't have my kid anymore. And thank God that I didn't have to pull out that gun on anyone, because I was just crazy enough to do something really stupid and selfish. But it didn't go that way. I got my son. We ended up going on the run. What they called abduction got some media attention, meaning it was all over the news and newspapers and on the nightly news. And then I happened to see this. We were in a store several counties away, and this is my beautiful blonde-haired little boy, and then this is me, drug-addicted mom, and then Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And these posters were all around town. And when I saw that, you know, it's like, you know, I did what any good, smart drug addict would do. You know, if they're looking for a long brunette mom and a blonde little boy, well, I'll show them. So I took my blonde hair, I don't know if you can see that, and I took my long dark hair and put it in a ponytail and cut it, and I went blonde. And then I took his beautiful blonde hair and I dyed it black. And I figured, they'll never find us. And they didn't. But what happened was the FBI was looking for us, and I knew it, and I got scared. So I turned my son over to my brother, and I ended up going to jail. And I was there for about 3 weeks, and like lots of really cool God moments happened in that jail that maybe I can tell you about another time, because they're really cool stories. Like, I don't believe I would be here if not for those stories. But you know, I was able to get sober. I was court ordered to a drug and alcohol treatment center. It completely changed my life. After I left the treatment center, I got custody back of my son, and life was really good. I was sober, and I was going to lots of 12-step meetings, and his dad was in prison, so he was out of the equation, and just life was really good. But during this time, I had a girlfriend invite me to church that I worked with, and I was just like, I'm not quite ready for the church thing. And, you know, she kept inviting me. And I don't know if it was like the 20th invite or the 50th invite, but finally at one time I said yes. And it was more of out of obligation, so she would stop asking me. And I get to church with her, and this pastor's up there, and he's telling his story about when he did drugs and the darkness of drug addiction. And I couldn't believe, like, I never knew that a pastor could have a story, like that a pastor could have darkness or depression or drug addiction in his life. And I was just standing there and tears coming down my face. And, you know, by this time I end up moving out of Florida, but I go back there quite a bit from living here in Asheville to visit. And every time I do, I make sure I'm there on a Sunday so I can go to this really cool church with this cool pastor who has an awesome story. And I get there one Sunday, and you know, I'm sitting like front and center, and we get through the music, and then there's a guest pastor, and you know, I'm like ticked off, like, what do you mean there's a guest pastor? Nobody told me this. You know, had I known, I would have made other plans. Hello, I was just here to see the other guy. But you know, I didn't want to be that person getting up and leaving. So as it turns out, that was the message for me. Here's a picture, and this is of that message on that day. I got a video of the service, and I actually got to see myself in the video stand up and give my life to Christ. And on that day, that pastor, he was just talking about living in a tomb of bitterness and sorrow and regret and depression. And I just felt like he was talking just to me. And then he gave the invitation to stand up and accept Christ in your life, to start living a new way. And at that point, even though my life was really good, I knew there was something missing. And I had so much shame in my life from my addiction, things that I couldn't even say that I had done because there was so much shame and regret in it. And I remember when I stood up and I invited Jesus into my life, it was like just this waterfall of love and grace that was just covering me. It was washing me. And I had never felt love like that before. And I always thought that in order to go to church or to go to Jesus, like your life had to be good, like you had to be living right and perfect, and that's not the God I serve. Like he comes in and he meets you right where you're at. And on that day, Jesus met me right where I was at, and my life has been forever changed. And today, I have this story of darkness and drug addiction, but there's no longer the regret and the shame, because I know that God's word says that he can use all things. It's out of your mess that he can make a ministry. And he doesn't call the qualified, but he qualifies those he calls. And I think of Madison and just the path that he's on. And one of my favorite scriptures, it's Proverbs 4:26 and 27. And it says, "Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your feet from evil." And I just think of this path that we're on right now with the coronavirus, and how hard it is to be inside all day. And I don't know if you're living with your parents or grandparents or who your caretakers are, but I'm gonna guess that some people are getting on your nerves and you just want to get out of the house. And I just feel like I need to say this. Like, I don't know what you're pondering right now. Like this word ponder, or the path, like it means to give careful thought to where your feet are going. And I know sometimes when we think about places we're gonna go, whether we should be there or not, just imagine that our feet are also in those places, and to ponder where we are taking ourselves. In this day with the virus going on, you might think that you're young and strong and you don't need to listen to these rules, because really this virus applies only to the older and the sick and those who are very weak. And I just want to encourage you that you might be strong and you might be healthy, and maybe this virus isn't going to come on you and make you sick, but this virus very well could come on you and you could be a carrier. And if you sneak out at night or go to some places that you're not supposed to go, that quite possibly you could be a carrier and bring it back to your family. And maybe someone in your household is going to get it, and the outcome is not going to be really good. So I just want to give you a couple of things to think about, and just to ponder the path that your feet will take you, and don't go to the right or to the left. The path that Jesus has called us on. I thank you so much for listening to my story. I wish I had more time to tell you a little bit more of the story, because it's when you get the whole story, you really see how God was pursuing me the whole time in my addiction. And no matter what, don't go down the path of drugs. Like, kids are dying left and right. Don't let that be you. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Hey, thank y'all so much for watching. It's a crazy, inspiring story. It just shows that no matter what you do, no matter what you go through, God will take it and use it for his purpose and his good. He loves every single one of us. Be back here tomorrow for day 6 of Testimony Week. I'll see y'all tomorrow.